Lee Rowley, welcome to the Marketing Study Lab podcast.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Fantastic. Love it. As with all podcast episodes, I start the same, and that's with a random opener. And today's random opener is, what is the most powerful word?
Breathe.
Like it.
Because without breath, there is no life.
Oh, boom. Oh, I like where this is going already. Fantastic. Right. Okay, Lee. What's the story that brings you to this stage of your career? And can you explain what you're up to right now?
Sure. I will try to keep the meandering to a minimum. I have been copywriting for 12 years. Before that, I was a corporate monkey. I was actually a compliance analyst for an insurance company, which is every bit as exciting as it sounds. Now, mind you, I didn't grow up in rural Ohio going, I want to be a compliance analyst or even a copywriter. You know, none of those things were on my radar, if you can believe it. You know,
No way.
I wanted to be a professional wrestler. I was like back when Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage, all these old school guys are out. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. It's like get in the ring and wear tights and then you know, I after years of training, I ended up with this, and it just didn't cut it. Yeah. So I had to like go into that corporate thing after college because I got an art degree and that was a bust. And then I just couldn't take the sameness, the boringness, the conformity of the corporate world. And so then I skipped on to the conformity and the boringness of copywriting. And what I mean by that is that everybody teaches you use templates, you use formulas. If all the thinking's already been done, just go hand copy Gary Halbert letters from 1968 and you'll suddenly know everything you need to know about copy. After about 7 years of making much, much less than I wanted to make, I finally went, okay, I want to rethink this. So that led me into the journey that where I developed copy branding. And, you know, I can walk you through and save you thousands of dollars right now because my whole shtick is this. Go where the buyers are, listen to them when they think you're not listening to them, and find out what's really going on in their skulls. For crying out loud, you don't know everything you think you know.
Done. We're done. Thank you, Lee. Pleasure.
Yeah, shortest podcast ever.
Everyone got that? Fantastic.
Yep.
Let's do it.
You're
the first person to mention Gary Halbert on the podcast as well. So
am I?
For that. Yeah, absolutely. Huh. Yeah.
And huge respect. I mean, I know that his letters generated millions of dollars, but keep in mind that was back when we actually had the time to sit and read a 10-page letter at the dinner table, because the alternative was listening to our wife complain or listening to the kids complain. We didn't have 700 shows to choose from on Netflix, and that's just in the new releases.
Absolutely. So going back to your career, what are you up to now?
Listen, so I primarily work with high-end coaches and some other high-end clients. My predominant focus in the open market is my training, CopyBrand University, where I'm helping copywriters, social media marketers, and business owners develop their own voice so that they can market it themselves effectively. You know, kind of going for the, you know, teach them how to fish, not give them a fish sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. So once again, thanks for joining me today. And I want to move on to some actionable tips. And the topic that I want to talk to you about today is creating persuasive content. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I'd like to discuss is, could you take us through the stages you need to generate this type of content? There's a lot of people listening that, like you said, can write copy and write 10 pages of copy, and doesn't mean it's interesting, let alone persuasive.
Well, I start at the other end of where most people start. Where I start is asking myself, what is the desired result of this content for the reader, the consumer? What change do we want them to make because of that? And that's so that we can help them better their own lives and so that we can bring them along that journey to wanting to do business with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we start with them and instead of starting with, this is what I want to say. This is what I feel like saying. This is what I feel like putting out there. Me, 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 me. No one wants to hear that anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's the first stage, is just, what do you want to do for the reader with this, so that they'll trust you enough to want to move along to the next step of that journey. And you can do that in a lot of ways. You can build trust and authority just through the content that you put out there, because when they realize that, look, you walk the talk, you're knowledgeable, you have the experience, and there's no reason for them not to trust you, but you have to build that trust first. And too many marketers want to go straight to, hey, let's do business.
Absolutely, yeah. I was just speaking to somebody before we dived on this call, and I've been saying it, and it was funny because they relayed it back to me. And it's like, if you go networking or you speak to somebody, you don't walk into a room, go, "Hi, my name's Lee, buy from me." And it's
Right.
like, yeah, we have this perception in our own insular business bubble that's what people will want our stuff, right? Of course they will.
Right. Of course we're interesting. Why wouldn't we be?
Definitely. So we're starting with looking at the result from the consumer end. Okay, so we've got
right.
that.
Right. So then we're going into what I call avatar immersion. And again, this is just really nothing more than spying on your ideal customers and clients. I mentioned in a LinkedIn post this morning that I spent about an hour and a half this morning strolling around a neighborhood of homes in the about 500,000 range, because I'm in talks with a potential client who is targeting people who are about 5 million and above in net worth.
Mm-hmm.
So what I found through some research was those millionaires aren't buying the McMansions, the huge showy houses. They're people who are living well below their means in 500,000 houses. Okay, so I'm walking through their neighborhood. I'm greeting them. I'm, just, petting their dogs. I'm talking to them. And I'm kind of looking around in the yards. You can tell a lot about people by walking through their neighborhood, what they value, what they care about. So that immersion really is the next step. And that's an extreme case because I'm talking about a huge client here and a huge deal. But Facebook groups, YouTube comments, go to Amazon and find books that your clients are reading and look at the comments and see what people like and don't like, because they'll tell you. Mm-hmm. And that's really all this immersion thing is about. But that's the whole second stage, is you got to get in their head and find out what's going on in there and don't assume you know. The third is really, for me, it's finding interesting things. I mean, I do a lot of research and find out what they're reading, what points I can tap into to connect with them. If I comment on about a book that they're reading, if I can work a line of that into some copy or content. By the way, I think content and copy are the same thing, and I'll explain that later. But if you can work even a line of that into, that may be just enough to make somebody go, that person gets me. I want to know more.
Yeah, absolutely love it. I think the one word that stood out there for me is the research word. And it goes right back to what we were talking about at the start. The fact that people seem to want to jump in to marketing at the front-facing end, the comms end, straight away, straight off the bat, and not even give it a consideration in terms of what these people are interested in or how the hell can we solve their problems. It's just, get some communication out there. Let's create some content. People love us.
Right. Those people are prescriptive rather than diagnostic, and it drives me nuts. There's nothing I hate worse than opening my LinkedIn messages and hearing from somebody who has the solution for my business without having the slightest inkling as to what I do. And it's not hard to sniff out. these people do understand when you're cutting and pasting messages, because they just get that sense of depersonalization. That you're treating them as a credit card number rather than as a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. Good way to put it, credit card number. It's strange because I literally just changed some copy this morning. So I usually send out a standard email that describes what goes on the podcast, questions, etc., etc. But now I've added into the top the apologies for the generic type of content. This is just so that you know the structure of the show, etc., etc.
Right.
I didn't want them to think that they are just another guest. Because I value every single guest that comes on. I really appreciate the time. But I don't want them to think that I'm trying to hoodwink them into thinking, thank you so much for your valuable time. You are amazing. Because it is copy and paste.
Yeah, understood. Because, if they do get that sense, I don't know if you've seen it in the podcast world, but I've seen more and more people putting podcasts out there just to attract people to pitch. And so you can always tell by the questions. They're like, well, what's the biggest problem you're facing in your business right now? And then, once they get you off, the recording goes off. It's like, so you said you had a problem with this. I can fix that for you for just, they open the jacket and they've got the, but that's happening often enough that people are actually kind of getting wary of going on podcast. I know I ask more questions than I used to. I used to be just like, I just jump on anybody's podcast. Hey, if you need content, great, I'll help you. But now, I don't want to get suckered into another one of these things that's not a good use of anybody's time.
Yeah.
Because if you get me on your podcast and I figured out what you're doing, because I already know I'm not your buyer, you've wasted my time and you've wasted your time because you could be annoying somebody else.
Absolutely, yeah. Go away, annoy somebody else. Fantastic. Right. So you've compiled all this research. You've done all that. You know your customer. What's the next stage? What are we doing with this research?
Testing, which is the part that everybody hates. You want instant success. It doesn't happen. I developed my voice on LinkedIn over a period of about 4 months. And we're terrified to do that. But you know what? If you put content out there and it doesn't engage, no one's going to see it. I mean, like maybe 50 people will see it, but it doesn't matter. I mean, when you're just starting out, you have the freedom to fail because nobody's paying attention. And when the sun comes up tomorrow, nobody's going to remember it. So this is the part that everybody hates. It's the testing, the what works, what didn't, the metrics. I work with a tech guy over at RAS and A3I. His name's Alex, who just loves diving into the metrics behind, the likes and the shares and the comments and all the things I don't give a crap about because I just want to rant. But but when you pay attention to that and you couple it with the conversations that you're starting, which is really what's important. I see so many people on LinkedIn going, okay, this person has 50,000 followers, this person has 100,000 followers, but if nobody's really engaging with their content beyond wanting to put their own name out there, then it's all pointless. If you're not generating discussion with your content, it's pointless. You're not reaching the right people.
Completely agree.
So, yeah. So really, again, that's where it comes down to, is testing and honing. In research is key here too. I'm a huge fan of the LinkedIn engineering blog because it will give you so many insights as to what they look for, how things are ranked, the signals that they use, how important they might be, all of this information that helps you craft your content, not just to appeal to humans, but to bypass LinkedIn's qualitative standards. I'm not sure how familiar you are, but for the audience listening, your content on LinkedIn, and that's just where I am, so that's what I talk about. It runs through multiple filters. The first pass filter is just giving it to likely candidates and seeing how they engage. So we go into whether they like, share, comment, how long they spend on the post, both pre-click and after they click see more. All of those signals are are automatically detected and evaluated to see if it should go farther in your network. And then if it looks like it maybe should, it goes to human editors who decide whether it should go viral.
That's
So
interesting.
you have to appeal to humans.
I think that's a valid point regardless, isn't it? Appeal to humans. They're the ones that are going to end up buying. So we've got to do that, really. How important, just as a side note, really, when it comes to copy, you have to appeal to electronic as well as human, but how much are you writing for I hate the word algorithm, but the algorithm, and how they judge good content, and how much are you writing for that human?
I use information about algorithms to get at the why. If an implementation is going out, there's a reason. And so rather than trying to please the algorithm, I go into the deeper reason behind it. So I'm a firm believer that in not trying to game the system. When everybody started talking about dwell time, and this was just like a week and a half ago, that showed up on the engineering blog, and then I read it that day, talked about it, and then within 3 days, I was seeing it everywhere. When that metric came out, I started looking at, and I got a couple of my team members in and said, okay, can we figure this out? What's making people dwell? What's making people hang on content before they click see more? I mean, we're talking text posts here. Things work a little differently on video and image posts, but by and large, it's like, how long are they hanging out there? Are they there long enough to actually consume that little bit of content, or are they just reading the first few words and going, whatever? And we said, okay, does starting with questions help? Does starting with a quote help? Does starting with this help? Is it this help? There's nothing. There's no consistency there. What it was about was the value. Was it relevant? Did it have potential to have value?
Okay.
Those were the commonalities, not, did we start with a 6-word question or whatever.
Yeah, got you. Okay, so we've done this research and we've tested. We know what works and what doesn't. But if everybody's doing that, we end up being exactly the same as everyone else. So how do you find your own unique voice?
Other than trial and error, I mean, it's I'm a firm believer in the inner work that we need to do to really succeed as entrepreneurs. And as I said, off recording, that a lot of what I do is hinged in Buddhist and Taoist philosophy. So, I tend to look at marketing a little bit differently than most do. And as a solopreneur, as a personal brand, that's who I speak to. So when you're developing that, there's something unique in your story that no one else can duplicate. There are a bazillion copywriters out there. I mean, and some of them are better than I am. Sure. And a lot of them aren't, but that's okay because I don't have to worry about all of them. I am me and a copywriter. I mean, me who also happens to write darn good copy. And so that has carried me much farther than trying to just say, hey, I'm the best copywriter out there. But it's that I am who I am, and I appeal to a specific audience. And the more you are willing to test and discover, the more you're going to find things that resonate with people, and you go, I didn't realize that. I'll go pretty far outside of my comfort zone sometimes. And again, not everything works. And I've gotten slapped by LinkedIn a couple times for going a little outside the line. But, it's really going into me and like, what do I want to do with my time? Why am I doing this beyond just I want to make money? Because look, if you're working, whether it's a business or you're working as an employee, if you're working just to make money in 2020, you're insane. It's just, there's just no other way to put it. I mean, if 100 years ago, yeah, I understand, but like, look, we have options now that we have never had before. And I'm not going to say, look, you can be anything you want. That's not how this works. But we do have opportunities, and you do have a skill set, a unique point of view that makes you appealing to a specific group of people. And that group of people, if you are diligent and you patient and you put the content out there long enough, that's enough people to sustain you for an entire career.
Yep. You don't need hundreds and thousands of followers. You don't need hundreds and thousands of customers even to sustain you for a career. You just don't. And I think people get blindsided by the numbers, like we were saying earlier.
Mm-hmm. So say what you think you shouldn't say in baby steps. And you can chop those baby steps up. It's fine if you want. As long as you are making incremental progress by speaking a little bit more of what you truly believe, but you think you probably shouldn't say it because somebody's going to judge you for it.
So staying with that then, when we're writing copy and content, which hopefully you'll explain why it's one and the same thing, how do we write in our own voice but resonates with our ideal client?
If you're writing, and what I'm speaking here of writing your own voice, I'm talking about the content that you as a marketer should be putting out there to attract clients. If you're working for a client, obviously they have to align with you as an individual before you're going to be able to do good work, effective work for them. Mm-hmm. I've learned that the hard way because I've taken on a lot of clients that I took on because I needed the money, but I really didn't want to work with them. And I cannot think of one instance in which it turned out beautifully and everybody was happy to the hilt. And, it's like, I don't care how long you've been in copywriting business, you will still have clients who are not happy with your stuff. And that's okay. It does not mean you're not a good writer. It means you didn't check the fit well enough, and I'm still guilty of that.
And I mean, I suppose we all are in some way. It takes a brave person to know exactly their client and only purely work with them, because everyone's different, and not a lot of people, or no, that's not true. Some people aren't particularly honest with others as well. And some people wear masks and others don't. And some people aren't what they turn out to be. So, you're a genius if you only ever work with those ideal clients.
That's absolutely true. And, as we were talking earlier, I've made a shift because of the COVID pandemic. And, I'm not immune to that. Mm-hmm. And I'm more than willing to admit that.
But that links to what you were saying just previously, that there's so many options out there. There's so many alternatives, and that if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that you can't rely on the market and that there are other ways of doing things.
Right.
So looking at a customer journey then, how would our content change depending on where people are in that buying journey?
Well, I always tell my clients that we have to meet them where they are. And again, that's first finding out. I mean, that's what makes that immersion element so important, is that if you don't find out where they are, who they've been burned by in the past, what they wish they had, what pains they'd like to get away from. I tell my students in CopyBrand University, unlearn something every day, because assumptions kill copy. And it is. I can't stress that enough, that knowing them is the first step. Because if you're trying to tell them a bunch of information they already know, then they're just going to look at you and, okay, I get this. I get, a guy on a phone a couple weeks ago who was like trying to explain to me how funnels work. And I'm like, did you even read up? And I got a hottie, don't you know who I am? Sort of thing. And it's like you just started in the wrong friggin' place because you didn't do your homework. And so starting where they are, and your content should be about getting them to that next level. A lot of times that's through, information, content that educates them. But I also, if you're crafty about it, it's indoctrination. And if you read my content carefully on LinkedIn, you will see that every post that I put out there, however innocuous it may seem, is carefully designed to make people think the way I want them to think about marketing. So that's really where I start. And then usually for me, it'll go to a private message conversation. And then it goes to a phone call. And if it goes to a phone, well, I'm sorry, old school. Zoom, not sheesh.
Come
Showing
on,
my
Lee.
age here, man. I don't like actual phone calls because when I'm talking to potential clients, I like to actually be able to see the expressions on their face and tell whether they're really give a toss about what they're saying or whether they're just making it up to sound good.
Yeah, I quite like that. I used to work with somebody, and even face to face, you'd have a conversation with them. They'd have their laptop open, and you'd hear a ping, and you'd be having a conversation. They would be talking, they'd hear the ping, and then they'd just go into this. Halfway through a sentence, they'd just go and then, and start reading something else. And you're like, wow, this is not a good use of my time. So that face-to-face interaction is hugely important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I guess, of course, what I'm saying is that, you get more product specific as you get deeper into the if you have to call it funnel, fine. Look at journey, I like better. Because then you can find out what they need, but take the time to find out what they need first and figure out how you can uniquely help them. And then you can begin that sales conversation, because really it's usually not much of a conversation if you go about it that way and just say, here's how I can uniquely help you. Not here's what I've done for everybody else, but here's where I can take you. Here's the promised land I have for you.
Yeah, I absolutely. Start with that customer's problem. What is their problem? And move on from there. Speaking of problems, you're giving so many valuable tips here for everybody listening and me, firing away, writing them down. What I want to know, though, what are the errors you see all the time? How do we avoid these errors?
Oh, did I tell you assumptions kill copy? Okay, yeah, I think I mentioned that. No, seriously, it all comes down to that. It's, nobody has a formula. Nobody's, proven jaw-dropping, eye-popping, can't miss formula for drawing thousands of readers and stuffing millions of dollars in your bank account by this time tomorrow. Thing is going to work for you. We are savvier than ever. We're more skeptical than ever, but we're also, remember, we live in the connection economy now. This is not the guru economy anymore. This is not the one-to-many. This is back to one-to-one. And if your audience, even if there are many people reading the same post, if the person in your audience doesn't feel like an audience of one, then your content is not doing its job.
If you can write copy that speaks to somebody on an individual level, then like that's magic. Absolutely magic. Yeah. Lee, you mentioned something. You've mentioned it a few times. I just want you to go into a bit more detail about your CopyBrand University, if you will. Bit of a plug, bit of an opportunity for you to spill the beans on that one. I'll put links in the show notes and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, really cool. Well, thank you so much. I'll try to keep this one part of it quick because like blah 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 blah. So people have been asking me for about 4 years, gosh, when are you going to teach other people how to write copy? And at that time, I was really just content writing copy, and I didn't want to get into it. But a couple of years ago, I got into video and live streaming and caught that bug, and then I found like, all right, fine. So I opened a few iterations of this, a couple of which were terrible. And where we finally landed was this. The internet marketing community, copywriters, social media marketers, business owners, all need a resource to know what's working now in copy, content, and marketing. Okay, and we have copywriting programs certifying people with a bunch of templates and saying, look, these work everywhere, any niche, just plug them in like one of the old Mad Libs from the 1980s, fill the names in and you're good to go. That's not how life works. And those of us who are smart enough to want the best for our businesses know that. So this is what I've created. It's a resource where, you know, once a week we're talking about what's working now. Once a week we're doing Q&As. We're doing write-ins where people can come join a Zoom for 2 hours and get their stuff done, where we've got coaches available to help them if they need it. And so this just kind of is this ongoing thing where they have access to educational resources whenever they need it. But instead of charging them a fortune, you know, the highest level of it's still less than $100 a month. And then for people who are just starting out, we've got a tier just starting for $1 for the first week, and then $27 a month. So wow. I've got software I pay much more than that for. So that's my big plug. I love having the community. And the more people we have there, the more we can interact and grow together. So that's my vision for it. And if you support that, I'd love to see you.
That's really cool. I like the fact that you're heavily involved in that and that it's up to date, it's fresh content, that you know, it's weekly, monthly, loads of stuff going on and slightly different, you know, in interactive elements that, and everyone uses those keywords now, don't they? Everything's virtual, everything's interactive, everything's live, and it's like, there's no context behind that. You're just using it as a buzzword because everyone's online at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. On Mondays we do writing challenges. I give them so 1 week I said what did I say? I sent them to this place where it picks a random country in the world, and then I tell them to write a journal entry from the perspective of someone who lives there having breakfast. And it was fun. It was challenging. But it taught them a lot about getting into other people's minds, immersing into that whole thing, getting them used to that, you know, being in someone else's mind to find out what they think, because then you know how to tailor your message.
Yeah, I'm really into anything like that where there's a specific, you're in a specific context, but what you're learning is different to what you are actually doing at that time. Although you're doing it. You know, if you said that to me this morning and I know you gave me a country, and I'll be like, why on earth are we doing this? I get it because I'm writing, different style of writing. I'm having to think that, but why are we doing this? But you need that. You need those different levels. I love it. Fantastic.
Thank you. So that's the deal. You know, everybody can get in for $1. Come on in. If you don't like it, just, you know, wave on your way out. I'm cool with that.
Shut the door. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Are you ready for some quick fire questions to finish up then?
I am. Oh, wait. Yep, I am.
Brilliant. Okay. What's that source of info you cannot live without?
My ego.
Yes. I've never had that answer before, and that is the best answer I've ever had for that question. And
when
your
I
ego's
hear
even
talking,
bigger.
when I hear it talking, I know that my thinking is astray and I need to go find out what's going on.
Fantastic. What was the last thing you remember Googling?
What is the average value of a multimillionaire's home?
Like it.
And that's client research, potential client research, I will say.
Yep. Brilliant. If you could tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
Don't whiz on the electric fence.
Marvelous. What's the most important thing to know in marketing right now?
I've said it a couple times already. We live in the connection economy. Deal with it.
And finally, Lee, most importantly, and I think you've mentioned a few things throughout the interview, but people want to find you, more out about you. Where should they go?
LeeRowley.com. I like to keep it simple. And the other reason I like LeeRowley.com is that there is a politician somewhere in England with the same name, and he didn't renew his name. I snapped it up, and they're mad at me.
I didn't know
I
that.
got
That
a,
is
I got a,
brilliant.
I got a strongly worded for British, in British standards, strongly worded letter about it, and I never gave it up. So I love LeeRowley.com. Go hang out there. CopyBrand U with the letter U .com is my training academy, and I hang out on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find, for crying out loud. So most of my daily shenanigans are there. Go check them out if you like. You'll have a laugh and you'll learn something, whether you know it or not.
Lee Rowley, thank you so much for joining me today. Absolute pleasure
Thank
talking to
you.
you. Thank you so much.